Welcome to the Coda Podcast. I'm Rue from Rue Films, and in this episode, I'll be talking to Zade Cross from Zade Film Co. Zade's work oozes class and elegance, with a focus on clean compositions and great use of light, all underlined by his talent for storytelling. Initially building his business as a minimalist solo shooter, Zade now takes on wedding film commissions worldwide that involve the use of multiple filmmakers across multiple days. In this chat, we delve into the logistics of coordinating a team of filmmakers on a wedding day and how this opens up a whole new realm of creative possibilities. Morning, Zade. Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. It's been a while since we've met in person, isn't it?
Yeah, when was it? I think it was Fedwed Meet, wasn't it?
Yes, but then since then the season's kicked off. And how's it going for you so far, season-wise?
Yeah, good. So I'm trying to think where I've been. London, Croatia, York, Tuscany, back in Tuscany this week. So literally all over, all over. But it's been really good, it's really fun. And it's been, I would say, a little bit more of a spaced out year in terms of bookings. So stuff not kind of, on top of each other. But that's actually been really nice, just to kind of have that space to plan each wedding, to kind of absorb and get really into each of the weddings and how I film each of the weddings, rather than being kind of rushed off the feet. But I think that's kind of the direction that I'm going in, that kind of doing less and concentrating on each of the bookings to really kind of smash it out of the park for each of the different bookings.
You're a details kind of guy, aren't you? And I really want to dive into this in this conversation in terms of a lot of the pre-planning for you to be able to create the best films is very important, isn't it? So
absolutely, it
works well for your methodology to have a bit of buffer space, I guess, so you can really focus. Let's get into some quickfire questions, mate. Okay. First one, how many weddings do you shoot each year on average?
I would say maybe 10 or 15 weddings per year.
And what cameras are you using now? You used to be a Panasonic guy, didn't you?
Yes, yeah.
Has that
I was Panasonic back until... So when did I switch over? I switched over in August last year or July last year. So it was in peak season as well.
No way.
Yeah, I know. And I was speaking to a few friends and some were saying go for it. Some were saying no, don't do it. But I decided to go for it and switch. I love the Panasonic. The Panasonic was amazing. The colours are amazing. But it was just there was a crop at 50p. So if you went to 50p, it went to APS-C. So all your focal lengths and stuff like that would change. If you'd have a 50, it would become like an 85. And it was just quite annoying if you were shooting with a TOG and, they were on a 35 and you were on a 35 and you wanted to shoot slow-mo, you were then on a 50, so you had to be further back. So it was just like that. So I switched over to Sony. So I moved over from the Panasonic S1H and the S5 over to the Sony A7 III. And I was shooting log with the Panasonic, and then I moved over and I've ended up shooting Cine 4 on the Sony. So
how come?
I don't know. I like it. Just I shot with a friend who used that profile, and then I just liked it. I was just like, it's less work, but I feel like shooting with the log with the Panasonic helped me a lot because it taught me to read the scopes. It taught me to kind of color correct properly. But then coming back, it's quite nice just to have a profile that's kind of easy out the box. You've still got that flexibility to kind of grade it and stuff like that, but it's just easy and it just looks good. I feel like log, if you get like a funky lighting situation, it's quite difficult to get it looking good. And you get obviously noise and stuff like that coming in the evening. The Panasonic, especially because I was shooting 50p, so that's APS-C with log. Those three combined just made for a really noisy image.
Right.
So switching over to the Sonys. The Sonys are just so clean compared to the Panasonics. So that side of it.
Are you preferring it?
Yeah, I love them. I feel like they're small. I have one on my hip a lot of the time as well. At the minute I have 3 cameras on me. So I have a 35
on your person as you go around.
75, yeah. So 35, 75, and I've now added a gimbal. So I have the the RS Mini. So I've got that on a strap over me as well. So I've literally got 3 different cameras. So having the Panasonic for that would just be killer, because the S1Hs. The S5s are smaller, but the S1Hs are big. They're like a DSLR. So moving to the Sonys was just really nice to have that kind of smaller, just smaller form factor. It was much nicer.
I've heard the Panasonics, the stabilization in the Panasonics is legendary.
Yes,
Is it a lot better than the Sony's, or are they kind of caught up now?
Yeah, so the Panasonic has this thing called like IBIS lock. So you have normal IBIS. It's like IBIS on steroids. You got normal IBIS, which is obviously if you're tracking, you can follow along. But then if you want the image just to stay still, like you're on a tripod or on a monopod, you can enable something called IBIS lock. And what that does, I don't know how it works, but it's like it almost like magnetizes the image and it locks the image. And if you move it around a little bit, it holds that position. But if you move it a lot, you get these kind of nudges, which is actually, you can stabilize that in post a lot easier because it's not kind of moving around and swaying around. So if you get these little nudges, you can chuck it into Final Cut and stabilize on top of that, and it will just take that nudge out really easily. But yeah, the IBIS is next level, I would say, in terms of Sony. But what I found with the Sonys is if you shoot with handheld with the Sonys, they're a lot shakier. Whereas if you put it up and use the EVF, which is what I do pretty much, just shooting through the EVF, that you've got that extra point of contact. So it's gives you that extra point of stability. So it's a lot better.
That's exactly how I shoot, but I would think that's because I was a photographer first and moved over. But I always have it to my face through the eyepiece because I'm using my big old slab head to keep it stable.
Yeah, same.
And then tuck my elbows into my stomach as well.
Yeah, literally like that, isn't it? And then just kind of it was a bit of a kind of learning curve moving over and then shooting as I was with the Panasonics, and then going, oh, hang on, this is a bit too shaky,
It caused a lot of controversy when you moved over to Sony in the WhatsApp group, Zade, because you were the last shining light for the Panasonic shooters. You were like, if it's good enough for Zade Cross, it's good enough for me.
Yeah.
But then you moved over to Sony.
Yeah, but no, I think for me, it's been like a really good switch, and I love the colours for Panasonic are beautiful, like log Panasonic, but it's that compromise of I don't want to be thinking when I'm shooting a wedding, like, oh, I've got to switch lens because I want to shoot in 50p. I just want to shoot and know that my focal length is going to be my focal length. It's going to be 50p. So what I do a lot of the time now is I just shoot the whole day in 50p and just leave it, just put in big cards. So I have a 256 card in my B and C cams. In my A cam, I have a 512 because literally, so like when I'm shooting on the day, I literally I overshoot quite a lot, but for me, that helps me find stuff in a weird way. So I'm kind of shooting and pushing and just keep pushing and shooting. And from that, I'm finding more creative angles as I'm going, if that makes sense. Rather than kind of shooting for the edit, I just like to just go and go and go.
I'm with you on that. And it's kind of having the camera to your face and seeing the day through the camera gives you that inspiration as well, doesn't it? Rather than just looking for it, then bringing the camera up. Pointing your camera in different areas and just experimenting you can uncover some magic, can't you, throughout the day? Yeah. And what lenses? What's your favorite lens setup that you got shooting with those Sonys now?
Yeah, so I would say it's probably the Voigtlander 75. It's fully manual. I was using that with the Panasonic, so I'm actually using that with I think it's a Leica M mount.
Okay.
So I've got a little adapter with that. The annoying thing with that is I have to replace the adapters probably every, maybe, I don't know, year or so because of the wear, because they're just like a metal adapter, so that you start to get some play in it and stuff. So I love the Voigtlander at the moment. I think it's got a really nice image, but I will be looking in the future when funds permit to kind of move to some kind of cine, I don't know, like a small cine prime for Sony, so it's an E-mount.
Oh wow, I've never even looked into that world. Is that something you've been keeping your eye on? Is it like?
Yeah, so I was shooting with the Sigmas. So I had the Sigma. What did I have? Sigma 35, Sigma 50, Sigma 85, and they were amazing lenses, but they were super contrasty, super clinical, super sharp. So I just wanted something that had a bit more kind of character, that had a bit more. Just wasn't as obvious. So I got the Voigtlander 75, and then I got the Zeiss Distagon, which is kind of a similar sort of vibe to the Voigtlander, completely manual, super small as well. So that was another reason moving over from the Sigmas. Sigmas were proper heavy, so 3 Sigmas, and then what did I get? So I got 2 of the Voigtlanders and a Zeiss 35. So 35 with the Zeiss, Voigtlander 50 and a Voigtlander 75. So all those 3 lenses probably saved me equivalent to like 1.5 or one Sigma lens in the bag.
Really?
Yeah.
And when you're traveling a lot like you do, that's massive, isn't it?
Yeah. So I went on a bit of a like reduce the weight of the bag kind of, mission. So had the F6 as well, the Zoom F6 for recording the feed. Then obviously the Zoom F3 came out, so I was like, okay, I need to get the Zoom F3. So it did reduce the weight down and stuff, so that helped a lot.
Talking of audio equipment, what's your main audio gear that you're using?
Okay, audio F3, so the Zoom F3. And I've just picked
That's the field recorder, isn't it? Like you say, to take a feed from the desk.
Yeah. So it has two inputs, I think, on it, which is, for us, for what we do, is fine. I've just got a Tentacle. Is it Tentacle Lab? Have you heard of those?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Have they got a time code built into them?
Yeah, I think you can get a time code unit for it as well to go on your camera and stuff. And what that means is, obviously, I've got my feed, which is 32-bit, and then I've got my Groom mic, which is also 32-bit as well. So the feed is probably the go-to, but then if I've got like a fail-safe, I will use a TX as well, but rather than falling back all the way down to the TX in terms of quality, you've got your Tentacle there to kind of fall back on. So that's quite nice. I bought that, and they're expensive, but they are amazing. The app is amazing. With the Zoom, I bought the Bluetooth plug-in for the Zoom F3, but it's so naff. You connect to it, you lock your phone, and then you walk away and you've got to reconnect to it and stuff. Whereas the Tentacle, you literally just switch your phone on and you can just go into the app. It's connected to wherever it is on the Groom. It's connected and you can see the levels. You can see it's recording. So it's really, you can add more than one to it as well. So it's really cool.
And is that recording internally on the device itself, or is it also transmitting a wireless?
Yeah, so that records internally onto an SD card.
So for the ceremony, for example, your audio setup, are you getting your Tentacle Lav on the Groom?
Yeah.
And then you get a feed from a desk if you can. What else? Say for registrar and people giving readings, how do you mic them up?
So Tentacle on the Groom, F3 into the feed, getting a feed with the F3. And then it's just TX, so I'll probably put TX on the outside of the Groom as like additional backup, and then TX is on the mics. Often they'll have like a mic at the front, for the ceremony. So TX on that. I don't really individually mic people up anymore. I used to do that, but I just make it clear in the pre-wedding call that, like, if you've got, obviously if they've got, you'd like to think if they've got a system, the people are going to go to that system. So it's just a case of putting a TX on there, tapping in, and then again, the backup for the Groom is probably a little bit more important because they're doing the vows, so that's super important. So having the Tentacle on the Groom with a TX as a backup of a backup is usually the way to go. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. His audio is always going to be the most important, isn't it? Because it's going to be getting him and the bride if they're doing vows, which is the gold. So are you because I'd never really get an audio system happening in my ceremonies.
Yeah.
Is that happening for most of your ceremonies? Then there's like a PA system.
Yeah, most of them. If they've not got it, what I'll do is I'll just recommend it during the pre-wedding call, because they're to rent. They're probably a couple of £100. So I'll speak to, if there's no planner involved and they've not got one, then I'll suggest it's probably worth getting one if you can, and then we can tap into that. I just usually say that the audio is going to be a lot better for your video if you get one for the ceremony and the speeches. Again, if it's a UK wedding, it's not a large wedding. For the ceremony, it's indoors and stuff, then I'll probably TX and then Tentacle, rather than kind of having that PA system. But it all depends on the event, really.
But yeah, so Zade, what was your journey into wedding filmmaking? How did you get to the point you're at now?
So it's quite a random way to get into it, really. So I used to work in IT, and I was like a DJ and producer. So we were DJing at different places, and then in the week we'd be making music, and we'd have a studio with like keyboards and drum machines and stuff. So we'd be working away, making tracks, and then playing them out at the weekend in clubs and stuff like that. So I got to a point where like all the partying and stuff kind of took a bit of a toll, and I didn't want to be up at like 6 a.m. on a Sunday morning and going into work just like feeling quite sort of tender. So I sold a lot of my studio equipment and then bought a drone. We used to skateboard as well, so we would film each of us skateboarding with it and stuff. And it just went from there. So I got the drone, and then I got the license for the drone. And then started doing some drone work, just doing like commercial bits and bobs. And then I then did like a bit of drone filming for a friend who was getting married. It wasn't actually filming in the church; it was just shots outside. So we had like a little I can't remember what, the Osmo gimbal, the little Osmo gimbal.
Yes,
Had the little Osmo gimbal, yeah, and I can't remember what drone it was. I think at that time it was maybe like the Inspire 1 or something like that. So I'd upgraded from the Phantom to the Inspire 1. And we were just doing bits and bobs. And it was like, I like these kind of aerial shots, but I want to do it all. I want to be able to tell kind of like the full story. So then I bought like a GH4 and it went from there. So, and then I got the GH5. I had a company that was very, very commercial looking. It wasn't kind of a wedding brand.
Yeah, because you started off with Zade Aerial. I remember that.
Zade Aerial, yeah. I remember I actually entered Tweer as Zade Aerial, like way back.
Did you?
Yeah. But then it just transitioned from that. So I was doing more commercial bits then, but it kind of moved over into weddings, and I realised that the branding with Zade Aerial wasn't correct for weddings and stuff. So I set up Zade Film Co, and then kind of ran them by the side of each other. And did my first wedding in 2017, and I think I did 2 weddings that year. First wedding was at Dodford Manor.
Yeah.
First wedding was there. Yeah. Maybe
It's
two.
not a bad start.
No,
is it?
It's not a bad start. No, it was really good. And so it slowly kind of transitioned then. I think I did 8 weddings in 2018, and I got to a crossroads because I was doing my IT job by the side of weddings. I think I had like 8 or 9 queued up to edit, and I was like, okay, I need to make a decision here because there's no way I can't do both of these things. So I made the leap and went full time I think it was September 2018, and then I ended up doing maybe 20 weddings or so in 2019, maybe a little bit less than that, maybe.
So it took off fast, didn't it?
Yeah.
Like once you jumped in full time.
Yeah, and then it's just now I would say the commercial bits. I rebranded Zade Aerial to Zade Creative, so that's changed from Zade Aerial to Zade Creative, and that still sits by the side. I don't really push that as much as I probably should because of weddings being weddings, they just take all your time. But mainly I would say it's probably like 90% weddings really now. So
yeah. And when you first started out, how were you getting your bookings? What was the most effective method of getting bookings?
I think doing the commercial bits, that kind of got the word about. So I was because I was working with businesses and stuff like that, it was friends hearing and going, oh, maybe he could come along and shoot the wedding. And I think that's how it's kind of sort of expanded into weddings in the first place, because it wasn't originally, weddings weren't on the radar to start with. It was more commercial stuff that was on the radar, with the drone filming, doing kind of these epic drone shots and being able to work in different sectors with the drone, and then I think it was more sort of through friends. So it's definitely, so like I think my wife's friend was getting married, and she was like, can you come and do some drone shots of the church and film me walking into the church with the drone? And I think at that time I had my younger brother along with the Osmo, so he was doing some ground stuff as well. He used to, in the early days, he'd come along and do, because he's quite a keen photographer. So he would come along and shoot with me and stuff. So that was quite fun, actually. It was quite nice, to shoot with your brother and stuff like that. So that was alongside, whilst we were both working, we would do bits and bobs together. So, and it's just really expanded from there. Yeah, really. Yeah.
But you couldn't drag him to come along with you to all the weddings after that? Were you shooting much after that?
Yeah, he's like, weddings, he's like, no, I don't want that anymore. Like,
takes a certain kind of person, doesn't it? Like us. Yeah, so now you're saying a lot of your work is through word of mouth, is through planners. And in terms of getting work through planners, is that something that's just organically happened, or is it something you have to reach out to try and get that kind of work?
Yeah, so I think it's a mix of it just happening. So just trying to create the best work that you can, and hoping that resonates with the right sort of client and the right sort of planner and stuff, being sort of very selective of what I share as well. So that's been kind of tweaked over time and to almost like pinpoint accuracy. I will only share sort of the what I'm trying to attract. I'll only put out what I want to attract more of. But yeah, it's just really, I would say it's been more organic than it has pushing to kind of connect. I have sort of sent out, pragmatically sent out emails and stuff. But I think it's difficult because these planners, obviously, they receive a lot of emails from suppliers and stuff. So, emailing them doesn't always convert because they're literally just probably bombarded with, different photographers and videographers always contacting them. So I think I would say for me, it's just been doing really good work and then just keeping your head down and hopefully letting the kind of work do the talking, just kind of cracking on. We had
a conversation with Phil White, and obviously he's very big in working with the planners as well. And he was very much, his approach was similar to yours, and there's got to be real attention to detail in the work that you put out there, because I know planners and sours are very particular, aren't they? They don't want to see like beer bottles shown in films. They don't want to see ice in glasses and all sorts of things I never would have considered.
It's so tricky because we don't have any control over that, Like bridal prep sometimes is just a nightmare, isn't it? Because it's just like you have to literally. I will go around and clear it up just so we've got like that. We've got that nice image without a beer bottle or without like a champagne in the background. But it's tricky. It's tricky.
It's one of those things that we have to navigate on the day, isn't it, to get nice, clean imagery. But are there these little things like making sure there's no beer bottles in shots? People are thinking why, but it's not just to impress like planners. It's kind of that attention to detail makes your films look better, and people don't realise it's that they know your films are good and are a high level, but they can't put the finger on what it is. But it's that kind of attention to detail, those little moments that have been adjusted. And I know you have a very high attention to detail, don't you, just throughout the whole day or the whole process. So packages, can we talk about packages for a minute, mate? Are you comfortable with that?
Yeah.
What is it that you deliver? What are your deliverables? And then if you are happy going into the actual pricing of it?
Yeah, okay. So I'm trying to move more in the direction of quoting like a bespoke quote now. So, if a planner gets in touch, asking more questions off the back of them getting in touch to find out more about the event and then exactly what, the bride and groom want, and then putting something together which kind of suits that, rather than just sending a brochure with a kind of outline of prices. But then you can't necessarily do that for every single wedding. If a couple gets in touch, it's better because they don't know exactly what they want. Whereas a planner, they've already sort of established exactly what they want with the bride and groom. So I'd say in terms of like, if I was to send a brochure, it would be usually 2 packages. So it would be like a highlights feature film and speeches, and then the second package is a longer feature film. So it's exactly the same package, you just get a longer feature film. Then I have everything else, like loads of different add-ons that you can add, like drone filming, just all that kind of like extra stuff, additional shooters.
And then so your base package would be you as a solo shooter, is that right? And then they can add on extras, or do you come as more than a solo to start with?
Yeah, so at the moment I would say depending on the wedding, so if they've got 50 or 60 people, I'd probably quote it as a solo filmmaker. But if it's a larger wedding, then I would quote. I'm trying to quote now. I think now I've had the options. It's the worst thing, because once you have the options, once you have like second shooters that shoot alongside you, and they give you those options, those creative options. Going back to solo shooting is like, I don't just want that bread and butter. I want like, for the ceremony, I want like a constant shot of the groom, like a really nice shot of the groom. And then I want like a drone shot of the bride as she walks down, and then obviously you got your standard aisle walk shot. So once you have those kind of options, it's hard to go back. As a solo, what I will try and do is I'll always try and like multitask. Like I remember I shot out in Tuscany last year, and I shot that solo, and for that, I remember for the fireworks, I literally had like the drone in the air. Before the fireworks went off, I'd sent the drone up and sort of sent it away and spun it round, pointed it back at the venue, sort of got far enough back so I get the crescendo, thinking about that and kind of trying to because you make these little mistakes, like previously we've done it where we've been too close so you don't get the crescendo. So it's like what we're talking about, all these little things you kind of save in your head, as you go along. But yeah, anyway, so I'd go back and get that drone shot, put the drone in the air like a couple of minutes before, stick an 85 on a tripod facing at the couple, tell the couple like not to move, just like stay there, kind of don't move, and then I'll go behind the couple with a 20mm or whatever, just so I can get that kind of over the shoulder shot with the fireworks going off. So it's like so what we do is when we work together, then, because a lot of the people that I work with are really good solo filmmakers, we just times that by two. So it'll be like, I remember we did one in Scotland, and for the fireworks we had like a drone team, we had a second shooter. So for the fireworks we literally had like 7 cams running. We had 3 drones in the air. So we had like a drone. Wow. It was like like drone safeties. Like they gave us the idea as well. Like they were like, they had the Inspire 3, which was epic, so nice. It was like having a Sony in the air, like full frame. I think they shot it in like ProRes HQ, so I ended up with like 2.5 terabytes of data just from that camera.
My God.
But then we had that in the air. They were moving around with that. They had a Mavic Pro in the air, which is at the front of the building, just a static. We had a Mavic at the back of the building, and then I'm behind the couple. Then we had a big wide at the back with getting all the guests in and stuff, and the venue with the whole of the fireworks going off. And then there's a shot in front of the couple getting their reactions, and then I think my second was roaming around getting like guest reactions.
Wow.
So there's about 7 cameras running just for fireworks. So it's like we kind of really like to, when we work together, push the boundaries of what's possible, kind of between the two of you. It doesn't always work out. Sometimes, you'll try things and you'll maybe go too far, and some of the shots won't turn out as well just because you've not had maybe enough time to set up a camera but it's good fun pushing, kind of pushing to get more out of those particular moments.
I find that super interesting as well, because I know the people that you have working for you are super talented. You're not just going into like random Facebook groups and asking for someone to be available, are you? You are getting like mega stars of wedding filmmaking basically to come along with you. You got Harrison comes along with you, don't you? And of course you got Eric as well, who's got a style very similar to yours as well. So having him on board is almost like having double you, right? In terms of in what he can deliver and what put out there. How did you find these people, and how did you get them to commit to shooting for you?
I think a lot of the people that shoot with me have like really good friends. Like, there's a circle of us, and we're all on WhatsApp. We're chatting on WhatsApp, and I feel like when I want to work with people that I really get on with on a personal level, because especially with traveling and stuff like that, you're with each other. This Tuscany one that we did a couple of last week. I had Harrison with me, so we were out there for probably like 4 days. So it's like you really want to get on with the people that you're working with, and I think it makes it, if you click personally, and then obviously your work ethic together matches, it works so well. Like Harrison's very similar to me in terms of how he works. He doesn't stop. He just keeps going. And I'm the same. I don't necessarily shoot for the edit. I'm going, and he's the same as well. And in terms of like, it's almost like we're on the same level in terms of what we're thinking. So I might think, I'll ask him to set that up, but he's already done it. So he's already a step ahead of me in terms of so he, like I say, he's like really proficient solo on his own. And I think if you're a really proficient solo shooter, then when you work with somebody else who's good at sort of solo shooting, what you can do, you can times it by 2 with like additional static cameras and stuff like that. So it's,
I really want to dive into this in detail. There's a few things I wanted to go back on and just around just to give a bit of context, because it's nice to get an idea of what you deliver as well, to be able to, when we talk in depth about these elements, it gives a bit of context. So you mentioned in your package you do a highlight film and then a feature film. Yeah. What are the standard length times? I know you said you can upgrade the length time of them, but how long would your highlight film be in general?
So the highlight film is usually 3 to 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And then the feature film is 8 to 10 minutes on the first package, and then 14 to 16 minutes on the second package. But if if I've got a lot of footage and they've booked the second package, I'll probably go to sometimes 20 minutes or 25 minutes just to kind of over deliver. Like, especially if you've got like 2 or 3 shooters, you end up with like an insane amount of clips. I think when we shot in Scotland, when there was 3 of us, that with this Inspire 3, I think we ended up with like 2,400 clips that I had to go through, like in the edit.
And that was just the fireworks.
Yeah.
Man, yeah. So like having to go for all that, and then you've got so much stuff. You're thinking, why leave this on the cutting room floor? You can get it in there, valuable things. Yeah. And you said you deliver the speeches as well, but did you deliver the ceremony in full as well?
Yeah. So I've got that as an add-on. But I'll
so
often...
speeches are part of it, but ceremony is separate, is it?
Is separate, yeah. But a lot of the time, if you've got a second shooter, then again, it's kind of that under promise, over deliver. So I'll throw the ceremony a lot of the time in. But then there's also the chance, if you've not included it, to upsell it afterwards as well. So I've had people book it and say, we want the full ceremony. So it gives you that flexibility a little bit to kind of work with it.
Yeah. And how come that one's not included but speeches are? Is that because with ceremony it just gives you the freedom to be more creative with the ceremony aspect of the day if you're not having to deliver it in full?
I think it comes more from solo shooting. So, when you're shooting on your own, taking it out to try and alleviate that stress between bridal preps and the ceremony. But I mean, a lot of the time, again, it's the details. So even though I'm not selling it, I will often film it in full just because I just feel like you need those kind of options. You need that secondary camera to fall back on. But I've experimented and shot just literally shooting the ceremony with one camera and moving around. And it does work, but it's a little bit kind of, it makes me a little bit uneasy not having those seconds to fall back on just in case something would go wrong. And it's stuff like timing as well. Obviously, if you're shooting with one camera, for the first kiss you need to move into the aisle, which is pretty much what I do now anyway, because I'll be using a gimbal. So before the first kiss I'm moving in with a gimbal ready to walk back. But yeah, if you've just got one camera, obviously you probably don't want the first kiss from that the angle of the vows. You want to be in the middle, have that that symmetrical kind of first kiss. So if you're shooting just one cam, you need to be moving and you need to kind of be thinking ahead of the game, which sometimes I think if you've got your shot at the back, you can lean more into that, and then again you've got options. So if you've got a shot at the back on a static, which is getting that first kiss, you can then, as a solo filmmaker, be at the front, get the kiss, and then quickly turn the camera and get all the VIPs as they're clapping and stuff like that. So then you've got options as a solo. When you've got like 2 or 3 of you, you can literally, we'll plan it out. We'll be like, right, well, I'm in the aisle to get the first kiss. Harrison or Eric, you're on the VIPs. If there's 2 at the front, or you can literally have them shooting those VIPs. We did a wedding in York a couple of weeks ago, and we literally planned the whole wedding, the whole ceremony out to a T. So it was like, people were moving at certain times and moving and changing lenses, like moving to a 135 to get details of, and just really planning it out and to squeeze the most amount of options out of that ceremony, and thinking about, from the couple's perspective, what is important to the couple. So the couple are going to want to see those VIPs. As a solo filmmaker, sometimes you don't always get a chance to get that. So when you've got those additional shooters, getting those kind of, those VIP shots is awesome. Just having options is really decent. Yeah.
So it gives you lots of options in the edit, but also, like you say, you're able to deliver a perspective of the wedding day that your couples did not see on that day. Yeah. They're so in the zone. They only get to see looking at each other at the front of the ceremony. You're there showing the reactions of all those people that they weren't able to experience on the day, and that's what we're there to do, really. When we break it down, isn't it? We want to show them the things they remember, but show them everything they missed as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Man, I need to get another second. I need to get a second shooter.
Yeah, get another 2, man.
Easy, innit? Easy. Yeah. So on your feature film, how would that ceremony section pan out? Are your feature films kind of chronological and the creative stuff all happens in a highlight film, or are you very creative with your feature film as well?
So with the feature, what I'll often do is keep it more simple than the highlights, just because I think if it's a long feature film, you don't want to be kind of jumping around too much. I think it needs to, if you're kind of sitting watching it, it needs to kind of flow in maybe I would say a linear form. But what I try and do is like parallel edit between the groom and the bride and the preps and the details for the morning. So rather than just getting all the bridal shots, chucking them, like establishing shots at the start, all, bridal shots, groom shots, pre-ceremony shots, I'm kind of trying to creatively sort of patchwork between those different segments, so it feels like it's like two stories kind of running next to each other, because they are in theory two stories, aren't they? The bride's prepping, the groom's prepping. They're not going to see each other, and they want to see those moments. So it's stitching those together in a kind of creative way that feels cohesive, and if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. So in a way, it's kind of chronological to a point, but you're interweaving that bit of the morning. So you'll be seeing the bride for a bit, then you go to the groom for a little bit, and then you'll come back to the bride and bounce between the two of them as if you are, as if it was probably filmed. It might be, if you were a solo shooter, you probably went to one and then went to the other, but you want that to play out in the film, bouncing between the two of them to give that sense of kind of the day moving forward. Yeah.
And it's also like what I've been doing more recently is trying to bring in audio from the day itself, rather than just using, all the royalty, all the kind of art lists that we use and stuff. Trying to, with the F3, get tap into, if they've got a band playing, tap into that to get that audio, because that, you can bring that into the edit. And what you can do is so basically we had this wedding that we shot in Loch Lomond. They had like an awesome party. It was before the party, the main dancing party had started. It was almost like drinks party, and they were dancing to 500 Miles. So it's like a classic nod to Scotland. So there was 3 of us filming that. So it was almost like we were filming it in segments, but because there was so many of us filming, it was almost as if it was a multicam. And we were able to, with the footage that we had, because we'd for the speeches, they were just after this dancing part. So we'd enabled the F3 really early, so we got like a 32-bit float recording of it was the Sensation band, who were like next level. So we got those recorded. So what I did is, it worked really well for an intro, because you got this 500 Miles. We'd shot loads of candids and stuff of the reception and stuff like that. So what I did is I intercut the candids with almost like the multicam that we had of the dancing with that music. And it just felt like even though those candids weren't at that time, it felt like it was happening at the same time. So I'm always trying to do that. We had another one in London that had like ballerinas dancing. So again, we tapped into the audio and we multicam that, me and Harrison. So he shot we'd set up like a static somewhere as a safety. He'd shot it on the mini, on the gimbal, with maybe like a 20 to 40 lens, a wide lens. And then I was on a 75 just sniping away. And then again, we were able to sort of set that up as a multicam, and then cut the candid stuff from the guest seated kind of, and the bride and groom chatting with the guests and stuff, intercut that with the ballerinas performing as if it was them chatting whilst the ballerinas were sort of dancing away and stuff. So it's sometimes it's handy to kind of tap in and set up a multicam if you know there's a performance happening, because you can kind of do some really fun creative stuff with it. And that for the feature, because you're not kind of just chucking a royalty free track over the top, it's a lot more authentic for the bride and groom, because it is it's from their wedding day, the music's from their wedding day. So that's something that I've been trying to lean more into, and then intercutting that with obviously the royalty free music that you've got, because obviously you don't have music playing throughout the whole day, but just trying to intertwine that with the royalty free music that we usually lean into.
So you really are giving the sights and the sounds of the day, but because it's professionally recorded audio as well, it really does feel like kind of next level, like the audio equipment that you're using. It feels like it should be there. It's not just a on-camera recording of someone playing guitar or whatever. It's a full-on proper recording of that audio. And they're really good bands that you're recording as well, right? Because I've had some of my weddings thinking they're not going to want to hear this back.
Same. Yeah.
There was a wedding that you did at Hampton Manor, and I was perusing your work again recently, and that one, I remember when you showed me that film, that Hampton Manor, I was like, because Hampton Manor is a venue I've shot quite a few times, and then seeing your version, I was like, oh my god, how's he done this? How's he made this venue that I've shot so many times look so different? But in that one, it opens with the audio from the band, doesn't it? But which I didn't realise at first. But then you hear the person speaking and saying like, let's get ready for a party and stuff. But that's the only time I realised it wasn't actually an audio track you put in, it is music from the day. It works so well, and it really gave you that sense of being there. And that's me as a complete stranger watching this person's wedding. So as a couple, being able to hear those elements, I can imagine that's really elevating your films and the experience of your couples from watching it.
Yeah, I think it's handy. Yeah, I think it does make it authentic for the couple. What I always try and do as well, it's I'll know exactly how long I want the intro to be if it's an intro, and I will look for a start and a finish. So with that Hampton Manor, I think there was like a 1, 2, 3, hit it, and then it starts.
Yes.
So that obviously was at the start of whatever they'd done. So I managed to kind of put that 1, 2, 3 in as the almost like the beginning, and then add the music in afterwards. And a lot of the time, obviously these performances are probably it's a song, isn't it? So it's like 3 to 4 minutes. So what I'll do, and this is where the music production background really helps, because I'm chopping audio up, and I'm noted, like it's like if it's a 4-minute track, I'm like, okay, right, I need this to be 30 seconds. So with the Loch Lomond one, I was able to loop it, even though it was a different segment, because it was the chorus. I was able to loop it and cut and trim down from like 3 or 4 minutes to like 30 seconds, but also have. I can't remember what they say. I think they're introducing them at the time. So I managed to get like, I think it's like everybody put your hands together or something like that with the bride and groom, then into the track, but then also they end and they say congratulations to the bride and groom. That's the Loch Lomond one. So because I was able to trim it down from 3 minutes, you've got like this nice kind of bridge. You've got this starting catch, like a catchy, like just them introducing the couple, and then the end point of where they're congratulating the couple. So it's like trying to look for these catchy start points and the catchy end points that I can kind of fade out to the couple's name. So it's not just finishing with the track kind of fading out. It's finishing on a point where it's ending. You know, it's a kind of an abrupt, almost like an abrupt end of tune, and then you can bring in the next track for the main part of the edit. Yeah,
fine little details like that just really, like I say, elevate the films. So would you leave that F3 recording for the entire band set?
Yeah, so we'll just plug a power bank in. It will pretty much just go a long time. So we'll plug it in and just leave it on. Obviously check it before the speeches and stuff kick off. But get that plugged in nice and early, just get it enabled, and then if there is any kind of nice segments that come up, audio segments, you've got them, and then it's like as you're filming, you're like, okay, that's recorded, I know that audio is recording, I can now just shoot away and get those bits. And what I've also been doing, which is quite handy, is if I have plugged in and there's somebody playing, like I shot a wedding out in Croatia, I was just shooting on my own. And for the pre-event, they were Irish, so they had like this cool kind of Irish guy playing on a guitar, like singing Irish songs. And I saw that at the pre-event, and I was like, right, okay, straight away, right, F3 plugged in, and then I've got that audio. And then for for a couple of songs, what I'll probably do is just stick a tripod on him, just fix a tripod and frame it up nice, and just leave that for a couple of songs. And I know then, again, it's having that option to cut away to him singing and then bridge my B-roll over the top.
Right.
You can still make it work if you shoot away, but obviously it's more cohesive if you can cut to something where they're singing, and it's moving with the track. The B-roll matches up with the track, if that makes sense, and the singer matches up with the track where you're cutting to. So
you're basically creating A-roll, aren't you, in a way?
Yeah.
That's like the A-roll of him singing. You can show all your other bits of B-roll, but then you can keep cutting back to A-roll of the music and the guy performing.
Yeah. And then for the bits where you don't have that, you can be clever in how you edit it to make it feel like they are dancing to that moment. So, for the Loch Lomond one, they did a couple of different songs, and for the 85, I didn't have like a full, because people were just triggering away. So it was trying to edit that in a way where it felt like they were almost dancing to the beat. The bits that I did have of them singing, I kind of laid out first. So it was almost like piecing a puzzle together. It was like, right, okay, so I've got these cohesive bits of B-roll where the guests are singing away. Right, okay, I know that's going to go with that part of the song in this 30 seconds. I know where that's going to go. And then it's like, okay, the bits that I don't want them singing, or I don't want clips where they're singing where it doesn't look like it's matching the track. So it's like trying to kind of like, it takes a while to piece it together, and you're fiddling away, but you just kind of, as you're doing it, you're like, that works. I'm working from left to right. Obviously, I've laid the track out first, and then I'm just kind of going through and going, oh, no, it doesn't work. Right, keep looking, like that works. And it's just filling in those gaps that you don't have to make it feel like it is that moment. So it's like tricking the viewer to feel like it is in that moment when in fact it's not.
So that kind of song, let's take that Lot Lomond. Was it Lot Lomond? Is it? How do you say it? Lot
Lomond, yeah.
Lot Lomond. I'm making it all sound very posh. Lot Lomond.
Yeah.
Lot Lomond. So that one, for example, did you have that idea of having that intro with the music from the start, or was that just something that just kind of showed itself to you during the editing process, during the culling?
Yeah, so it was, I used it for a part of the feature. So
right.
When I was working on the feature, I was like, oh yeah, hang on, I've got this audio. I was like, I wonder if I can bridge this together, and it worked. So I did a longer version of it with the whole track for the feature film. And then when I came to edit it with the highlights, I was like, how can I start this? Like, it was a really kind of like party day, and I wanted to start. With my highlights, I always want to start with a bang. I always want to like a sucker punch. Just as soon as you switch it on, it's like bang, like, oh, okay,
yeah,
and then go back down to the preps, and then go back up and maybe finish on dancing as well. But I just really like the track. I really like the way that the band had sung the track. So I was like, okay, how can I do this? And then it just fell into place through playing around. Like, I think they did like a really nice entrance, and the audio said something like, "Put your hands together for the bride and groom." Da 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 da. So I ended up putting that entrance from behind of them walking back as it pans up with the gimbal, and then it was like everybody's standing up, and it almost feels like they're walking into this big party, but obviously there were different moments. But it just fell into place. So yeah, the short answer is from the feature. Editing it from the feature, just not want to use like the royalty-free music, and then when you get to the highlights, I'm always trying to do something different. Like, I'm trying to think, how can I? Although it's difficult at times, because we are in theory trying to reinvent the wheel, aren't we? Because we are in the confines of a wedding, but it's like, oh, what can I do to do something different? What can I start with? And then you find these little hooks, and then sometimes it doesn't work, so you're just like, okay, back to the drawing board, and then you keep searching, and it's just a case of searching for these they're just little gems, and you find them, and you're like, yes, this works, I'm onto something, like, and then you've got a good start, and you can kind of carry on then and through the rest of the edit.
So it's not like on the day itself when that song had happened, were you thinking, maybe I'll be working this in the edit, this whole...
I feel like that day itself was like a little bit of a light bulb moment, in terms of like, now it does make me think, because I've done it before where I've just left the F3 on, and by like chance I've gone, oh, I wonder if I've got the audio for that, and then you check and you go, oh, I've got the audio for that, and that's quite nice, and I can use it. With the Hampton Manor, because they had speeches, literally, that was a difficult wedding. That was solo shooting, and they had like 9 like Norwegian speeches between I think it was girls that mix, kind of like doing like performances between and stuff. And by the end, I think it was like 4 hours of that, and I was just knackered by the end of it. So I just left it running, like left the F3 running. Yeah. And then when I got to the edit, I was like, oh yeah, it's handy to have that. So it's a little bit of kind of like almost trial and error, just going, oh yeah, okay, that's handy to have that. So next time I'm just going to leave that running. And if I've got like, it's trying to think, okay, for that A roll, what can I do for the A roll to keep that running, so I've got something cohesive to cut to in the edit. So,
yes.
Yeah.
So now you'll have that in mind now when you're shooting from that day, and being able to put that bit of performance. I'm trying in my head work out how in your feature film. So have you got like a 3-minute section of this song being performed then, kind of thing, in that feature film? So is that literally just the song and people are dancing to it, or is it cut to parts of the wedding day as well?
Yeah. So that was that was basically, we filmed everybody entering, so we had like a nice gimbal shot. There's a big glass house, and we had all of the guests like walking into the glass house with a gimbal behind pushing in. We had like a drone pushing in. So the music starts, and it's like them performing, and you've got the guests walking in. You're then cutting to like candids of the guests and stuff. And then I think we did I can't remember what order we did, but we did the bride and groom entering. And then obviously all the party bits, again with kind of candids of, of VIPs and other kind of guests intercut over the top. So that's pretty much it. Yes, it's trying to make it feel, trying to do the full kind of segment of, rather than just like candids, all candids and some partying. It's like, okay, we've got like a transitional clip, that goes from, because they had cocktail hour in another building, so we did like kind of guests walking over there, some drone shots of the outside, details of like, all the stuff that you'd usually do, like your candids, you're holding glasses and all that kind of stuff, and we intercut all that together. And then we had that music dropped out, and then this new music kicks in, and that's obviously the people entering the transition is entering into the next kind of area, this glass house, and then obviously it slowly kicks off as the music kicks off. Yeah.
Oh, so that performance bit that you put together is kind of the party section of your feature film kind of thing.
Yeah, I would say kind of almost like your pre-party. They have like dinner entertainment, and it kind of kicks off, that kind of thing, and then that music drops out
just before the big old party,
just before the proper party. And that Loch Lomond one literally was like the best party I've ever experienced. I remember we were absolutely shattered, and the party was so good that like it just lifted us up. We just got into it. And I think there was like three of us. Again, it was like one person was on gimbal going like round the party with the gimbal, like a wide lens, and Eric was on the 85, and I was literally on the 35 again, just like in there with the bride and groom, getting like, it's like like you're in a mosh pit, kind of. But it's good having those options to cut to and cut between. But that party was next level. The lighting was amazing, like behind like and it obviously had the Sensation band who were just like next level. Amazing lighting, amazing guests that were like, it was like a club. It was literally like a proper club experience, and just being able to capture that is just fun. Like I really enjoy the dancing part, getting stuck in and because people just go crazy like in the a lot of the. Sometimes the dance floor does fail, and I'm always a bit like, like you want those dance floors to kick off. So, but that was just it was like next level.
Yeah, and it's just like one of those moments you think you're pinching yourself, like how on earth am I being paid to have such fun?
Yeah, and I remember the planner came over to us, and she's like, would you mind stopping like an extra few hours? They're happy to pay. And I was like, yeah, that's fine. Like, that was with Colin Ross.
Yes.
So it was a really fun wedding. It's quite stressful. The running of it. I think these bigger weddings just are like stressful because you've got you're managing multiple people. It's often in different locations. The logistics for these big weddings are, a lot of the time if you're shooting these smaller weddings, it's like a nice, you've got your ceremony that you've really got to concentrate on, and you've got your speeches that you've really got to concentrate on. Whereas these big weddings, there's so many big moments throughout the day. Every moment is a big moment. So it's like trying to kind of navigate that and plan who's doing what throughout that, and make sure that everybody's kind of in the right place at the right time as that happens, to capture all of those different angles is stressful at times, but it's good. It's good fun. I enjoy it.
So talking about teams, and that's obviously where your work is really pushing at the minute, isn't it? To these big teams, and shooting weddings with multiple shooters. Can we break that down in like how you're planning for each day, what you're looking for, what you want from your second and sometimes third, maybe even fourth, or drone team shooters? Break that down for us. How you work in the day.
Okay. Yeah. So prior to the wedding, I'm literally creating a spreadsheet. Once I've got the finalised schedule from the planner, I will literally create a spreadsheet which has like the names of the shooters that I've got, and then I'll go through the schedule. So I'll literally create an hourly schedule through that, and I'm planning kind of who's doing what. So we did the York one. There was three of us. We had D Films, Eric and myself, so we split it. So it's basically divide and conquer. So
Right.
you are just dividing up the day. So somebody will do groom preps in the morning, somebody will do like the details and setting up the cams for the ceremony, and then I'll be with the bride, and I'll probably be coming in quite hot. You know, I'll try and stay with the bride till the last minute just to get those. I'm finding if you've got multiple shooters, you want to kind of take some risks and try and get almost like a few more in between moments that as a solo filmmaker you'd be gone, like you'd be shot off setting up for the ceremony. So I'm trying to stay with her and get like, I don't know, like get like a gimbal shot of her walking into the ceremony area, or if it's like a big area, obviously not straight down the aisle, but yeah, just trying to kind of balance it out. It's a divide and conquer. I will go through and literally plan the whole day. So you've got your ceremony, cocktail hour, reception. So it's planning out who's doing, if we've not got a drone team, who's doing the drone, who's doing gimbal. Often I'll do the handheld stuff because I know that I'll gravitate towards that in the edit. I want to use my own. It's weird, isn't it? Because when you shoot, you kind of you favour your own shots.
Your role, are you still approaching that day as if you are the solo shooter in terms of everything you're capturing, or are you relieving some elements that you're not going to worry about? Obviously, ceremony set up, you're getting people to do that for you, but for the majority of the day, are you still busying yourself as you normally would?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I will do the like the A shots, the A grade shots, and then try and take advantage of having these seconds for more creative angles of the day. So like, what did we do for York? So like York, they had a car driving up to the building, the bride and groom and all the guests kind of waiting around at the house, and they were all going to greet the bride and groom. So we knew that. So it was like, okay, what can we do with that? Okay, so we've got, you know, Eric on the drone following the car up to the house with the house in the background and everybody there. I was on the gimbal, on like a 40mm on the gimbal, 20 to 40 on the gimbal, sort of running back as the car comes up. And then Dan from D Films, I think he was on like an 85, and he was just shooting guest reactions. So it was like each segment of the day, we're kind of trying to break it down in that way. So, you know, what can we do? Like, how can we cover this really creatively across each of the different filmmakers? And also from a focal length point of view, you know, being like, I think if you didn't plan the wedding with the shooters, because everybody uses an 85, you know, you'd end up with just loads of 85 stuff, which looks, you know, that's not really what I need. I need basically what's going to elevate the production what's going to elevate the film. It's like having a gimbal, like having those transitional stuff between the scenes. Having that movement from the gimbal is cool as well, and then getting reactions that you couldn't usually get, having the drone, like trying to kind of bridge it all together in a really creative way, rather than everybody just shooting on a 85, which I absolutely love. Like, I love my 85, I love my 75, 85, but I think in terms of the films now, what I want is, I don't want it to be all 85. I think there's a time and a place for an 85, and they are amazing. It gives you a clean image and, you know, clean composition and stuff. But for me, it's trying to kind of to use wider lenses and get them in the mix, because I think, you know, wider lenses are harder. You probably know this as a photographer. Wider lenses are harder to shoot on than shooting on an 85. Like, you can shoot all day on an 85. Everything looks like pretty good, you know. But it's trying to kind of bring in movement, which is motivated movement. So it's not just like random kind of, you know, movement here and there. It's motivated. It's, you know, guests walking up to the ceremony. It's guests entering the ceremony, you know, through the flower arch. And it's trying to kind of think what the couple have spent their money on. If they spent loads of money on an arch, on a big, you know, arch, it'd be amazing to get the guests walking under there. It'd be amazing to get the bride walking under there and actually have that as like a push in, you know, a gimbal shot. And it's just trying to think into those details of the day, break it down, and then say, right, okay, between us, this is how we're going to attack it. And then on the day, obviously things do change on the day, and we do have to be like fluid. And we all have headsets as well, so it's something that I've invested in. So everybody's got headsets. So on the day, you've literally got like a a button here, and you can just press that and you've got an earpiece, and you can talk to each other. So you can say like ceremony set up, or audio's done. Like you can easily check in, rather than getting your phone out and being like you can literally just go, I've done that, okay, bye. Like, or
what's the range on them?
Oh, they're really good. They're really good. Obviously, if you're in different places, it's tricky, and if you're in a really like old place with really thick walls, then it does make it difficult. But it worked fine at York Minster. It worked. They've been flawless. Like as long as we're all in the same place, the range is incredible. But that in itself just helps on the day when stuff doesn't go right. If somebody's not able to do something, they can say, I'm running behind here. Can somebody help me out? And then you can jump in and help each other. And then you can say, like, if you've got a plan. I remember we were shooting in Tuscany, and I'd absolutely hammered the candids. We had loads of candids, and I'd shot a load of gimbal stuff for the details. And I said to Harrison, like, don't bother with the candids. Just if you can get me some static stuff of the details of the flowers and stuff like that, then when I come to edit, I've got some nice movement stuff, and then I've also got some longer 75, like some 85 stuff for the details. So it's having that quick, being able to just talk to each other and stuff is really handy. Like it's really handy.
And especially, so I imagine during something like, say, speeches, where you have to shift, if people move into a spot you're not expecting, and you have to shift a camera, and then one of your other cameras is probably in the spot, you can be there saying, please move that camera for me, or that would be so helpful for me in certain elements. I've had someone's moved in the speeches, then moved to a position where they're stood right by one of my B cam. So there's no way of me framing them without my B cam being in the way, but to be able to whisper into my little microphone, please go move my camera out the way, it would be so handy. It's so handy.
And I think with the speeches as well, like we'll literally plan it out to the point of, like we know exactly what focal lengths we're on for across all of the cameras. Like cam 1 will be 135. So what we'll often do is do like two speaker shots, like a mirror, because they'll often turn, won't they? And a lot of the time you've got to move your cam, and if they're turning to face, if the bride's on the right or the left, that speaker's going to turn that way. So if you're that side, you're going to get the side of their head. So if you've got the two, you've got options to kind of cut to. Then we'll have like a couple cam that we move in on an 85. That's kind of a nice clean shot of the couple for their reactions. What else will we have? Like a wide shot of the whole speeches set up to cut to, just in case we have any problems. And then
will you possibly be in that shot, or you're not too worried?
Yeah, we're not bothered about
it.
Yeah, that's just a safety. So even though you can see the static tripods and stuff, it is literally just almost like a go-to should anything fail and stuff. And it's usually at the start, like if they've got speeches between stuff, if they're having that safety there just whilst you bring in those cams, because a lot of the time we're not going to leave those cams during dinner, and you're probably the same. You take them away, let them do their stuff for dinner, and then you're moving them in. Whereas if you've got that wide safety, 10 minutes before you think it's going to kick off, you can just press record on that, move your cams in. So it's usually like two speaker cams, a wide cam, and then a shot on the couple, and then also on top of that, which I've started doing, is I will just roam around with a 75 and just shoot like candids, like reactions. So if they talk about the mum, I'm shooting the mum. If they talk about the dad, I'm shooting the dad. And I'll also do between that as well, is I'll just hold the camera for a couple of minutes on different compositions of the speaker. So as I come to the edit, I can jump to like a really funky composition of the speaker, and I can jump to these reactions as well as having the other cut to of the speaker as well on the 135. The 135 is probably favourable just because it's like a clean, like a close or mid shot. I don't know, it's probably between a mid shot and a close shot, but
so you've got two of those. That 135 shot. Is that the one you're mirroring? So you've got two 135s at the speaker from either side, 45 degrees, kind of.
Yeah, and that's on like a autofocus eye tracking. Like just you can kind of leave them rolling, and they're doing their thing there, and then just roaming around. And again, it's just trying to, out of each little segment, trying to squeeze every bit of creativity that you can, and give yourself as much options as you can in the edits, really.
So on your roaming camera, are you just letting that record the entire time, just so it's one long clip, so it syncs easily to your multicam?
Yeah, so I've tried just shooting bits and bobs, like just holding and just doing like 20 seconds, 30 seconds. But what you get is you can, I don't know if you've done it in Final Cut, but you can create a multicam, you can create a new angle, and then you can chuck all those loose clips in, and you can highlight them, and you can say sync to monitoring angle, and it will just then go, if they're all together, it will go bup, 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 and it will move them across sort of in the edit to sync with that music, but sync with the dialogue. But there's a catch: if they're too short, then Final Cut struggles to find it. So what I'll do often is do it in like 2 or 3 minute segments and just move around and shoot. And then when Final Cut comes to sync it, there's enough kind of waveform there for it to go, oh, okay, I recognise that goes there. And so that's handy. And then on the edit, you've just got like another bit that you can kind of flip between where you can get guest reactions and stuff. Yeah,
that's great, shout, because then you'll see it pop up in your angle monitor when you've got something good coming up. You're like, oh, so maybe I'll keep an eye on that. Because, I really do. And this has come from doing these podcasts and chatting to some of the guests. I want to start getting more guest reaction elements in. But I mean, as a solo shooter, you're just fighting just to get the basics sometimes.
Yeah.
From some multicams, aren't you? So
it's really hard, isn't it? Like to do it as solo. It's like, especially if it's like, I always find it's difficult if they have the speeches before the meal. If they have the speeches after the meal, you can just have your tripods ready. You know it's coming. They're bringing out the champagne and stuff. You're like, okay, it's going to kick off. I'll be ready for this. Whereas if it's like, these busy events, it will be like you're going for portraits with the couple. You get back, they do their entrance, then they're starting speeches. So it's like, it's tricky. It is really tricky.
I find myself quite often recently having to dip out of the portrait session a little bit earlier just to be getting the speeches, and then just hoping that we have a nice light later on to take them out for some more couple stuff. But so on the ceremony, in terms of approaching that, because that's a nice breakdown how you're doing speeches. What's your setup for the ceremony? I know you touched upon it a little bit earlier, but what's your setup if you're a solo shooter, and then what ideally if you're doing it as a team?
Okay, so solo shooter, I will probably have like a 35 or a 50 at the back. I'll be on like a 75 at the front right. So if you're stood at the back on the right hand side, shooting over the groom's shoulder at the bride. Yeah. And then I'll probably have like I've experimented with having like a really wide shot on the opposite side, but then I'm not often going to cut to that, or having like maybe a 50 mil if I'm using the 35 at the back, a 50 mil the other side, and then moving that to kind of be almost a cut to a mirror of what I've got on the 75. But you've got to be sort of juggling that and reframing it, because obviously when they come down on the tighter you are, the harder it is to. Obviously, you've got to recompose that because you're not going to get it bang on because you don't know where they're going to land. So the wide's quite nice as you can set it up, kind of point it between where they're going to be sort of here, and then all the guests are sort of lined up here. So it's quite nice to kind of have that. But again, is that going to make the feature or the highlights? Probably not. So having that 50 to cut to, but then you've got to kind of run round, and sort that out and stuff. But that would be, I think, my approach as a solo. For a team, so we've kind of got like a go-to way that we do it. So it will be 2 cams at the back. So it would be like dependent on the length of the aisle, it would be like either an 85 or a 135, either a 50 or a 35 on the second cam, and they're literally just stacked up above each other. So they're
you've
right
got
next
wide
to each
and
other.
a tight of that same frame, but the wide is different enough to the tight that you can cut between those two without it feeling weird.
Yeah. So you've got that kind of so you want that difference in focal length. Obviously, if you did like a 35 and a 50, it's not really enough for you to kind of see that difference. So like if you're doing like a 35, like an 85 is nice, but it all depends on the length of the aisle. So you'd have that at the back. That sits on the shoulder of the last person on the left hand side of the aisle. So that's getting a groom reaction shot. So it's probably the more usable shot is the tighter shot for the groom reaction as he turns round. We're framing that at him, and then my second shooter would then be at the front, tucked right in, to get a shot of the groom. So I'll be stood at the front filming them coming, obviously the bride coming down a bit to the right, so I'm not in my own shot, so I'm not stood in that next to the groom. He'll be to my right, tucked around. If you imagine that when the groom turns around and faces the back of the aisle, he'll be almost like on a 45-degree angle of the groom. So he'll be tucked in probably with the front, the front row, almost level with the front row, trying to get that kind of, so it's not that profile shot. Once the bride comes down, obviously I get her from the bread and butter shot of the aisle. Once the bride comes down, the second shooter then runs to the back and moves those 2 cams into the middle. So you've got like a symmetrical wide, and you've got a symmetrical full body. Obviously we don't want to cut any legs off, so full body of the bride and groom. So as they turn and face each other, you've got that kind of that nice cut to. And then we're basically just at the front and mirroring each other. So I'll be on a 75, he'll probably be on like an 85, and we're just mirroring each other. Dependent on which side you're going to be, obviously dependent on the ceremony setup. So a lot of the time I'd favour being the side where you can see the guests as well. So you can you can get the couple, you can get them doing their vows, but also you can shoot through the couple to those VIPs and get that kind of nice like foreground bokeh, you know, as you shoot through stuff and snipe away, and you can shoot as they're holding hands, you can shoot like I've got some really nice stuff with the one in Scotland of the dads like crying, like and the mum crying and them clapping and stuff as they were doing, even I think because they did like readings with the sister or something like that, so like the clap from the end of that was good enough to use after the first kiss, if that makes sense, because it was that like passionate and like happy and like, so I could intercut that to match as if it was, you know, I was actually in fact in the middle with the gimbal when they first kissed, but I was able to cut to that shot previously from a reading and use that as that kind of as that almost like that multicam, as the buffer, between the shots. So a lot of the time, it's just we're at the front shooting back at the guests, trying to squeeze as much as you can out of that ceremony.
Do you have like any kind of communication with your second at that? Say if you want to get in reaction shots, are you giving them the eye to make sure they're kept on the couple initially, or are you just relying on that rear back shot?
I think it's maybe relying on the rear back shot, but having a lot of the time we'll have a plan sort of what we're going to do. Like with York, I'd literally planned out to the T when they were getting that, you know, that mum and dad shot. So it was like as they left the aisle, we got a really nice shot of that actually. We got the dad, and the dad was like proper bawling, like his eyes were like welling up and his bottom lip was going. But we also got it with like, we got that shot. So as soon as they'd kissed and they were coming down, the Deed had focused on them, and you could see him like crying, and mum and dad just there like bawling. But also you had like foreground like bokeh of the bride and groom leaving, so it was him in the background focused on him, but then the bride sort of veil as it passed with him, and it was just like mint shot. I was like for the kiss. Just like we got that, and then just clapping for the first kiss as well. So we had Eric on a 135, and he was like up in the stands like higher up, and he was the opposite side to the mum and dad, so he was shooting with this 135. So for the first kiss we had a middle shot on a static, so we knew we could cut to that. So that would be the A shot for the first kiss. But at the time, Eric's shooting across that whole camera, shooting this you know, the mum and dad like literally clapping and like somebody cheering like that with their hand and stuff. So it's just like having those kind of little options that you can stitch together. What I always try and do with my edits is like I'll jump around a little bit, but in amongst that jumping around, there's continuity. So it's like you've got the sequence to build that little bit of scene. So it's almost like the first kiss, clapping, and then we're away somewhere else, and then it's like just gives you those options. You know, you can go crazy with it, but then you can come back to a little like sequence and then go crazy again, sequence, go crazy again. So
I need this in my life now. Like the idea of those shots is just stunning. And also I think it was in a photography group where a photographer had asked all their couples what is the most important shot to them from the day, and an overwhelming majority, it was the brides that they were in communication with predominantly here, and the overwhelming majority was they wanted the reaction shot of the groom, and it wasn't even about them coming down the aisle, it was like they wanted the reaction shot of the groom. And I've tried my best as a solo shooter. Now I'll move right into that position that you were on about, that you have your second shooter, kind of that 45 degree. I'll try and get myself into that position and then come back around again. It's such a risk. It's such a gamble. But I think that's such a really important shot from the day, trying to get that green reaction.
Yeah, it's a key shot. And I think what you've said as well about moving, I've done that as well. So I think if the aisle's long, you can do it. Because when you're going to cut to the bride, you're not going to cut to the bride when she's outside of that kind of the seating area. As she approaches into that aisle, that's where you're going to cut. That's where you're going to cut to her. So if it's a long aisle, he's going to see her anyway early. So you know at that point you're going to get a reaction from him. So what if I'm shooting solo? What I will do is go around similar to you and shoot him. I did that in Tuscany last year. I shot on my own there, and I will literally get his reaction. I think before I got like a little tear wipe, and I was like, yes, like that was perfect. And once I've got that, I know, okay, ticked off. So I'm back in the middle, and then obviously when it comes to the edit, you've got that tear wipe, and then you've got her as she enters the aisle, which is I think the most important bit.
But like you say, it needs to be a long one, isn't it? Because I've gone around to that spot before.
I've done it.
Got the green reaction. I've come around and like, oh my god, she's here.
I've done it.
Like, they've like almost like they've sprinted down the aisle or something.
But, I had one where I'd like it was in, I think it was in Los Angeles, and the doors were closed for this church ceremony, and I could see the light through. It's on the website. I could see the light from outside through the ceremony doors. So I was like, right, okay, I'm going to expose for that. I'm going to drop my exposure. It's super risky. I'm going to drop my exposure, expose for that shot. And the doors opened, and it was like, all you could see is her, like in this square.
Oh.
And then I was being super brave. And then the aisle wasn't huge. And then I was like, right, I was on an 85 as well. I was like, right, I'm going to run around and get the groom. So I literally switched and get the groom. And then I switched back to get the bride, and I didn't get the shot that I wanted out of that last shot. But then what happened was that first shot, it doesn't matter that I didn't get her in the aisle, because I'd got that kind of that killer. That was the shot, that kind of the doors opening, like they literally opened the doors together like that, exposed. Her and her dad stood at the end. It doesn't matter that like I didn't get this kind of killer aisle shot, because to be fair, in there it was like horrible light. It was like like a big orange hue. Like that shot there, they were in natural light. It just looked gorgeous. It was exposed right, and I was like, and I got his reaction as well. So combined, I feel like you've just got to take risks. Like you have to take risks. Like you can shoot everything safe, but I think there's always coverage versus creativity. So like you can cover something amazing, but then that's not going to give you what you need for your feature and for your highlights. You need to kind of take these creative risks to get those those killer shots, and they don't always work out. It doesn't always work out, but it's being brave enough to kind of take those risks and get those shots for the feature.
So I imagine, do you find yourself now as a solo shooter, after doing lots of work with the teams that you build up around you, do you find yourself taking more risks now as a solo shooter because you're used to getting these extra creative shots and you can't be without them?
I feel like that's where the good stuff is. Like the good stuff is in change, is in not doing the same thing all the time, experimenting, going for it. Like obviously you've got to mitigate that risk a little bit. You can't just like go wild and not get anything, but like that's where the good stuff is. Like not doing the same thing all the time, incorporating different angles and trying new things. And you'll try something new and you go, oh wow, like I got that. Like doesn't always work out, but you get bits and bobs from it and you'll go, oh, I can do that next time now. And then you start building this kind of almost like a list in your head. You know how you do something and it works out and you go, right, I'm going to do that again next time. So for me, it was like, as a solo filmmaker, I got to a point where I was shooting everything on an 85. It was looking great. I was really happy with it, but it got to a point where creatively, I was feeling like I was just doing the same stuff. I was ticking the boxes. And then I think moving into teams and then bringing in a gimbal and experimenting again with that. And, when I first started, I was like, oh, I'm not going to use a gimbal. It's too much faff. And I think it is when you're on your own as a solo filmmaker, a gimbal is a bit of a faff. But if you've got a team of you, then it kind of unlocks a few more options, and you can be a bit more playful and experiment and kind of try these new things.
So you were saying earlier that you now walk around with a gimbal attached.
Yeah.
So can you talk me through how that works? So is the camera on the gimbal as well?
Yeah. So camera's
calibrated, ready to go.
Yeah. So camera's on the gimbal. You can put the gimbal to sleep with one touch. If you just press it once, it just goes to sleep. And then I'll have a strap on the camera. So the strap, the strap goes over my arm, and then when I need to use it, I just pull it off my arm, press the button, and it goes, and then I'm walking back, I'm ready. It's a little bit of multitasking, and it's stressful sometimes. Sometimes when you bring the gimbal to life, it's really funny. Like if you've had it over your shoulder, it will knock the gimbal. So the gimbal, when you take it out of sleep mode, it'll be upside down.
It'll be upside down.
So you'll press it, and it's upside down. You're like, oh, I spoke to a mate and he said he did it and he brought it to life. And literally, it's the eye walk, and he's filmed the eye walk upside down. Like, he's just captured it upside down because he's not had the point to, and just flip it in post, yeah. But I think having that gimbal on you, especially for like portraits and stuff, just gives you a chance to do. You can do walking shots. You can do some kind of stuff that's going to elevate the video rather than just all static stuff. And if you're working beside a photographer that's on like a 35mm all day. If you're on a 35 and an 85, and you're sort of shooting and running, I just feel like that is a bit of a hindrance. Whereas if you're on a gimbal, you can just kind of walk as the couple, as they're walking with the couple, you can just easily walk with them. You're on a 20 to 40, so you can easily you can match they're not going to be in all your shots basically because you can match up that focal length and you can move with them as well. So straight after the ceremony, a lot of the time, I'll have the gimbal set up to the side here, and I'll move in with the gimbal to walk back with them with the photographer, because they appreciate that, because often they're on like a 35 anyway. So I'm walking back with them with the gimbal, and I just think it looks like on a wider lens, that movement just looks kind of epic, with everybody clapping and especially if it's confetti as well, you kind of walking back and it just looks cool. But it's not always for the faint-hearted, and it does feel sometimes when you're moving in with the gimbal, it's like, oh, here we go, right, I've got to be ready, I've got to check the autofocus, got to be tracking. It's like, it does add to the stress, but then the shots that you get out of it is just well worth it.
So when you're on your gimbal, I'm interested in this because I've got a gimbal myself, which has just been collecting dust from the moment I bought it.
Yeah.
So you're auto-focusing when you're shooting with that gimbal. And do you like set it to wide tracking, or are you pressing the screen to like track one of their faces and then just walking back?
Yeah, so the tracking on its own will just look for the eye, so it'll just go blah, blah, blah. But obviously if you've got loads of people by the side, it might clip off and stuff. So it's just tap to focus, so I can literally just tap and then you can cancel it whenever, but it will just then follow them. It's pretty good, like Sony autofocus. Coming from Panasonic, where I just shot everything manual, like everything was manual. And then, now having the gimbal stuff, where before what I would do with the gimbal is I would stop down a little bit and I would try and keep my distance between the subjects. Yes. So I'm not coming out of that kind of focus plane. But now, obviously, with the Sony, it's just like, buff.
What camera is it you've got on that gimbal?
So I've got 3 A7Ss, so basically all exactly the same in how they're set up and stuff. And then
A7S3?
A7S3s, just 3 of them, and then one just stays on the gimbal. I've got like a quick release plate off the gimbal, so if I want to take it off the gimbal for speeches, I can just take it off. And that generally stays as the wide, and then you've got 35-75, and then obviously for speeches you're go into 135 and stuff.
I can't picture this gimbal hanging off your back with a camera attached. I imagine I'd be scared the camera's going to fall off and all sorts, but and that's quite a heavy little setup, isn't it? It's probably worth me mentioning to anyone that's not watching the video version of this, you are in very good physical shape, aren't you? So this is probably not for everybody, having all these cameras hanging off them.
I think it just helps having those options. But it's like I say, sometimes it does feel a bit like, oh, this is a bit much. Like you got, but like for the edit, I'm always thinking like, for the edit, what options I can give myself for the edit, and having those free. Like having that movement is just awesome. Being able to cut to it like a gimbal shot, and then getting the nice 75, a nice 35.
Yeah, and having that on you all at one point to deploy at any moment throughout the wedding day, it's just opening options to you. And this is it. You've spoilt yourself by having so many shooters that you're going to need as much options all the time now to be able to create the films that you want, right? The standard that you've now come accustomed to.
And there's often times where it's like we'll have, obviously, my seconds will have two or 3 Sonys. I'll have 3 Sonys with me, but then for the ceremony you need 5 or 6, because I like to have the 3 cameras on me probably till the last minute, and then it's like, you've got to like take lenses off and switch lenses and stuff. We were a bit like that in Tuscany at the last one. I think we needed a spare camera, and I was with the bride, and I remember like Harrison came running through and he's like, give us a camera, like it was like late, so it was like again, I was trying to stay with the bride to the last minute for those creative options. It was her, I think it was her and her brother walking her down, but it was in beautiful Tuscany, and she was walking through this like really beautiful garden. So it's like, if I can get a gimbal shot of that, that's my bridge from preps to into the ceremony. It's just squeezing it to get those additional bits. He's shooting the pre-ceremony, so he's there sniping the guests as they're kind of sitting down and stuff, and then you've got this awesome bridge of her walking, in this beautiful light in Tuscany. It's like,
and that's what it's all about. It's all about getting, like I say, squeezing as much as you can out of every moment and getting beautiful shots of everything, so you can really piece together such a comprehensive but artistically creative film for your couples. If we can dive into your editing process a bit now, Zade, and that we've spoken a bit about it through the conversation, but I really want to kind of get an idea of the timescales of each part. You come back from wedding now, you've got all your footage, you're ready to edit it. Where do you start, and how long does that first section take?
So I will always go through and curl the wedding back. So if I've got, we spoke about like the Scotland one having like 2,400 clips to go through and stuff. It's just I think that the timescales do sort of vary in terms of the event. And obviously, if it's a multi-day event, it's going to take longer to curl and stuff. But I would say maybe curl taking maybe 1 to 2 days, depending on the event. And I'm big on, like, as much as I hate it, the organizational side, like getting all your clips in good order, getting them keyworded, getting them colored. Like, so what I'll do is I'll add like a color for each of the different parts of the day. So when I drag it into the edit, bridal preps is pink, groom preps is blue, ceremony's green, all those blocks are different colors, so it's easier to kind of see what's happening. And I feel like when you're editing your highlights, you can tell then if you're mixing it up, if you visually, just by looking at the timeline, you can see, right, okay, there's lots of different colors, sort of, so I know that I'm mixing it up and I'm not just dragging all the bridal preps together, dragging all the groom's preps together. You can see that you're kind of jumping around, and I think visually that's quite nice to be able to see. So
I didn't know you could do that. So in the inspector in Final Cut, you can select clips. So you keyworded them all together, so then they all show up together. You then highlight them and assign a color to them. Yeah,
so once you've created your smart collections with the keywords, so I've got my my bridal preps, groom preps, I'll go in and do Control A, highlight all on that, right click and do new audio roll, and in there you can create the corresponding names to your smart collections. So you can do like bride preps, groom preps, and you can assign a color to that, and then if you add that to each of those different smart collections, when you drag them in, they'll have that color.
Right, so it's actually using the audio roll function to give it the colour. Ah, that's clever.
Yeah, and then for the, obviously for the drone shots, it doesn't have an audio channel, so you just use like video rolls for that. And just, again, to apply a colour. But yeah, so basically going through culling, I've experimented a little bit because we're using Final Cut. I've done the cull where you will just create all your smart collections, and then you drag those smart collections as groups into a project. So you've got all of bridal preps, all of groom preps, all of ceremony, all of cocktail hour, and then you can literally go into those blocks and say, I don't want that, that's I'm not going to use that, and you can trim the blocks and stuff. What you can also do with Final Cut is you can use the browser as well. So you can go into the browser on the individual clip and you can pick the in and out points. If you hold shift, you can pick, if you've got a long clip. Dancing, what I'll often do is I won't start recording, I'll just gun and just, because it's so quick, and so I can go through and I can cull that and I can set all the in and out points. I kind of, even though it's a bit clunkier, I do prefer dragging it into a timeline, having all of that in the timeline, like a linear, almost like a doc edit of your raws, all dragged in. And then what I'll do is when I start the feature, I'll just copy all of that out of my cull project, create my feature project, and I'll just paste it in, and I'll put it on the right hand side of the edit. I'll lay out all of my music for the feature, what I'm going to do. With the live music, I won't always know that I'm going to use that, so what I'll often do is I'll lay out my royalty free music that I'm going to use for the preps, for the ceremony. I'll extend areas because I'm working in the speeches to these segments as well. So often the speeches will be the wrong size, so I'll be extending the music so I can keep all of that speech in that segment. And I'm when the music drops out, the speech often is finishing. So it's like, and then I'm going into another track. So it's like as a speech finishes, a track will drop out, and then a new track will come in, and a new speech will start. So it's trying to kind of bridge it all together. So visually, I've got like a really solid foundation. I've got all of my music laid out, all of my speeches laid out, And then it's a case of then just laying my B-roll down and leaving gaps in that B-roll to show different areas of the speeches. If that makes sense.
So the A-roll. So you got your A-roll down for initially you're creating you got all the audio elements and A-roll there.
Yeah.
And then your B-roll is getting sprinkled over the top, but allowing the A-roll to poke through at certain elements just to send you back to see the person speaking and give it a bit of context. Yeah. Do you not use you ever tried using the favoriting system in Final Cut for culling?
I haven't tried favorited. No. What I'll often do is you can do so I set it to hide deleted. So what you can do is you can just go through and just press delete on the ones that you don't want. You can literally just go through the right to left through the browser and just delete, and it just disappears then because you've got hide deleted just dropping out of there. So you end up with just the clips that you think you want to use. Then you can go in and you probably can. You don't even need to do if you're happy the clips are decent enough. You probably don't need to spend ages doing the in and out points. But me again being details. I like to get all the in and out points done, and then when I drag it in, it's already ready to go, and I can just piece it together. What I'll often do with dancing, especially and cocktail hour, is I've created my keywords for cocktail hour. I'll go further, and I'll go for dancing. We've got somebody on a gimbal, so there'll be an audio roll for that. We've got somebody on. We've got the couple. We've got standard guest dancing on an 85. We've got. What else have we got? Slow shutter, if we're doing slow shutter as well. I'll break them down into subgroups. So when I'm coming to edit the dancing, I know visually by looking at the timeline that I'm jumping between the different bits and I'm not just doing the same clips next to each other. So I'm not going guest. I'm going guest, couple, slow shutter, gimbal, guest, couple. So having those colours,
and you can see that visually from the colour code. Like look, glancing at your timeline, you can see the colours. So you can see it's got a nice even spread. Yeah,
and you can obviously you've coded all your dancing. What I'll often do is with it in the timeline like that, I'll go into it and I'll create the audio rolls for those clips, and then I'll drag them all together so they've got the different colour blocks. So all of the slow shutters together. All of the guests dancing together, all of the couples together, all of the gimbals together, and then when I'm dragging it into the creative edit, it's just there for the taking. I know it's all good stuff, and I'm able just to jump between the two and give it. And then when it comes to the edit, then you've got variety in the edit. You're not doing the same thing. That's what I'm always looking for. Obviously, good story, but at the same time, variety in clips that makes it feel like different, like in the different clips. So having those different focal lengths that you can cut between. Gives you that variety in the edit, really,
building the story part that you've spoken about. So doing that culling, laying down your audio and your music. Is that the 2 days that you were saying?
No, I'd say it depends on the wedding, but the culling will probably take a good day. So what I'll do then is, I'll cull it, then I'll do my ceremony speeches. That's probably like a day to 2 days. I'll cull that, so I'll go through once I've done my multicams of my ceremony and my speeches. I'll create a new project, copy that speeches out of that project, and go through and just chop all those speeches up, get rid of the stuff that's not going to make the edit, and have this kind of all of the best bits of the speeches. I'll probably label them up. I think you can do like a label on the clip, and then I know when I drag that in, that's the best of the best. Once I've laid my music down, I'm dragging those bits in, and I'm trying to think in terms of what they're saying. So obviously if they're talking past tense, if the wedding's happened, then I'm going to, a lot of the time they are in the speeches, I'm putting that after. But if they're talking about like the bride, then I'm putting that before. If they're talking about like growing up and all that kind of stuff, then I'm using that over the preparations. If they're talking about the groom, because obviously I'm using that over the groom. So it's like having the bride bit, groom bit, and then when they're like congratulating the couple, they're saying now that you're married, all those good bits, that goes after the ceremony, after your vows. So it's laying it all out so it's all ready to go, and then just dropping the B-roll over the top. And it's trying to think creatively how you can kind of stitch it all together, and not just stick all the cocktail hour together, and not just stick all the ceremony together, and not just. So for the ceremony, what I'll do is I'll jump between like the portraits that we shot of the couple, the guest candid emotions, the VIP candid emotions of the ceremony, and the actual vows of the couple. So it's kind of like you're stitching that together as well.
Yeah. And it's really hard for you to give. You can't really, like, I always drill people for definitive answers on timings for the edit, but you can't really, because the weddings that you do vary in scale and team. It's going to be so varied in with your edit, isn't there? And like you say, if you've got such attention to detail, how you want to bring in the audio, the music audio from the day and intertwine that, then it's basically how long is a piece of string when it comes to your editing, really, isn't it? And that's why I guess you're focusing on shooting less to be able to, you need to put that time into the edit. Even just organising that, the amount of clips that you're getting from these big team weddings is going to be a long process, isn't it?
I think we've said about it before, me and a friend have discussed it, and it's like these big multi-day weddings, it's probably more efficient to do a cheaper wedding and do 2 or 3 back-to-back, and then the edit is just... not a cheaper wedding, but
a simpler one in terms of logistics.
In terms of layout, so you could literally do 3 back-to-back. You know kind of what it's going to be like in the edit, and you could probably charge a third of the price, and then you could earn the same amount of money, but you could do it a lot quicker. Whereas these multi-day weddings, like you've said, it's completely different.
So the audio process in terms of your edit, do you do much in terms of tweaking the audio, and how long does that process take?
What I do a lot with my ambient audio, because I'm bringing in quite a lot of ambient audio, or I'm adding Foley audio as well for stuff, especially more so with the highlights. But I have done it with like a feature. What I'll often do a lot of the time is, because of the fireworks going off and stuff, they'll have music over the top. So what I'll literally do, which is crazy, is I'll turn the audio off, all the clips on the on-camera audio, and I'll bring in individual like firework noises and stuff like that, and rebuild the audio. Yeah, so I'll literally flick along, like pressing along on the arrows, like going on like through the different frames, and I'll watch when it pops, and I'll add a pop sound, and then I'll keep going, and I'll work the way through and do all the pops, all the explosions, and sort of build them so they're in line, and then add like zips and whooshes and all those kind of stuff between it, and maybe add, to fill it out a little bit, maybe add some like atmosphere, like you can get like firework atmosphere, so it sounds like it's not the actual firework, well it is the actual fireworks, but it's from a distance, so you can kind of layer it with that, so it like builds it up, so when you watch it, it just feels like you're getting that kind of firework sound, but you're not getting like whatever music they've got over the top.
Are you using much ambient sound from throughout the day as well, like with people talking through prep and things like that? Do you use much of that?
Yeah, a little bit. I'll kind of fade in and out. If there's any prominent bits, then I'll boost them so that you can hear them even more. But what I'll do with all of my clips is I'll extend all of the audio across the board on Final Cut, and then I'm adding crossfades between the two as well, so they're kind of fading even between the ambient, between each clip, they're fading in between each other. But if there's any bits that stick out, then I'll try and bring them higher in the mix. But what I'll sometimes do as well is if there's like clapping or something like that, that's not that prominent, or if there's clapping or like cheering at a certain part of the day, which I think is more prominent, I'll copy that from that part of the day and I'll use it if I feel like it's going to bring to life, say, the fireworks. Or at the end, I remember this one that we've just done for the Tuscany one, at the end they all cheered, but they all cheered when the fireworks finished. So what I did was I copied that and I brought that along with the fireworks itself, so it sounded like they were cheering at the point of where the fireworks are going off. Just doing little things like that, you can kind of almost make it... I'm always looking to kind of bring out more emotion and make you feel, like as you're watching it, to make you feel a bit more. And for me, if I'm editing it and I feel something from it, then I know 100% that my bride's going to feel something from it and my groom's going to feel something from it. If it moves me, you know, if it, like, you get that kind of, you know, as you're editing, you're like, yeah, this feels, you're just going with how it feels and doing those little things to enhance that scene. And I think audio is massive for that. Like, you know, like doing that thing with the fireworks, like without the music in the background, that's just like visually, when you're watching it, you won't know. It's just a subconscious thing, I think, with audio. If you add all these layers in, people are watching it and they're like, "Oh wow, this feels like really immersive," but they can't put their finger on why. And often that's because you've kind of taken the time to, you know, not just kind of add to that scene with that audio, if that makes sense.
Yeah, enhancing it, and audio as well. Like I always find with audio, you'll put a lot of effort into it, but it goes under the people don't notice it. They don't notice it to say, oh, like they'll see a beautiful shot and go, oh, what a stunning shot. How did you shoot that? But they probably won't even mention the audio because it's something that's subtle, but at the same time, it's massive in terms of how it elevates films, isn't it?
Yeah, and what I'll have to do is EQ that audio as well. So like coming from the sort of music production background, I know that anything below, say, 80 hertz is going to be just rumble, and I'm not going to need that in the mix. So I'll go through and I'll copy and paste a low pass filter on all of that, because that's just going to muddy the mix up. So I'm doing that all across the board. You can basically go onto the EQ, the audio for dialogue, turn up the decibel booster to like 25, make it really thin, so it's, I can't remember what it's called, but make it so the frequency is really thin on that. Play the audio, and you can jog through the audio, and you can take out I think it's the resonance or something. So as you go through while it's playing, there'll be bits as they're talking which are really sharp, and that, like, because you boosted that decibel up, you'll hear that as you're tracking through. And what you do is when you find a point that sounds really like, really harsh, you can actually then minus from that. So you're taking away that kind of that edgy stuff from the audio. So it's making your dialogue sound a bit smoother and a bit kind of softer. And I'll do that throughout the whole. So obviously you've got all the points on the EQ. You've got like 5 or 6 points. I'll work the way through from left to right through all the dialogue, and then minus that out. And then obviously take your low cut off the bottom. So like take away the 80 hertz, below 80 hertz. And then I'll put a notch in the music as well. So in the music, where the main body of the dialogue sits, I'll put a notch slightly out of the audio, and what that does is it makes room in the frequencies for that dialogue to sit alongside the music. So as well as obviously altering the volume and stuff like that, it just sits nicer in the mix rather than trying to kind of compete in the mix.
Right, so you're not just going into the audio and dropping volume down. You're dropping the frequencies out a bit to allow the frequency of the dialogue to come through. For the
mid part of the dialogue, so when you talk, you've got there's a main area of chunk of I don't know, but basically your mid tones of, I think it's mid tones, bass, mids, treble, yeah. So mid tones. So I'm basically making a little, they call it notching. Basically, I'm notching out a little bit of the music frequencies, so those mid frequencies just sit nicely above the audio.
That's got to be a super lengthy process.
Yeah, but it's quite nice when you've spent so long on editing the highlights and stuff like that, and you get obviously you're doing your grade as well. So with the colouring as well, I'll go through every clip, turn off my grade, white balance every clip, go through, find like a white area on the image, and then balance that out using either the highlights or the midtones, often the highlights, and then pull that round so it's like perfectly balanced. Then I know when I turn my grade on, it's like you've set your foundation. All those colours, nothing should jump out at you. Obviously, if you're inside and you've got like some tungsten lighting, you're going to need to balance that before you put your grade on, because what your grade is doing is pushing that colour further away from what it actually is in real life. If you've already out with the tungsten and then you add in your grade, it's going to look even funkier, and then you're going to cut to that shot from maybe a shot outside where the white balance has been perfect because you've been outside and it's in good conditions. That clip's going to really stand out from that. So it's trying to get the white balance across the board, all good, then switch your grade back on and stuff. So yeah, so it's like you edit your film, you lay your B-roll, and then the next step is you do your colour, and then the next step after that is go through and do your sound, add in the Foley at the bottom and stuff like that. But if you're really happy with the edit, taking that time to really kind of put the icing on the cake is really like satisfying, because you kind of go in that extra mile with it.
Yeah, you're really sealing that edit down and putting an extra level to it. So your grade, are you using a LUT?
No, so I was using a LUT, but I've moved away from using a LUT. So I've basically gone into Final Cut and done my own grade. So it's basically just like a very subtle teal and orange. In terms of my client base, that's more what they want. They don't want it to deviate too much from what the event is. And if they've spent thousands on flowers and stuff like that, if you come along and whack a grade on the flowers look a completely different colour, it's probably not a good look.
Yeah. So you've got you've built that kind of almost a preset that you can drop in now. That's you've got your base colouring, but within Final Cut itself.
Yeah, so that's saved. You can build a stack of effects in Final Cut. Yeah. and then you can save that. And I've got that, and I just drag that onto an adjustment layer. So I've got my adjustment layer over the top, and it's just got stuff like color wheels, like working in different colors to, you know, into the mids, into the lows, into the shadows. And then it has some hue and saturation changes as well. So they call it cleaning the blacks as well, which is really good to do at the end of the chain. So basically what you'll get is when you're changing the colours of stuff, you'll get some leakage of colours going into the shadows and stuff like that. So obviously you want your blacks to be black. So you can do it with hue and saturation. You basically you desaturate the black, and that sits at the end of the chain. So you apply all your colour, and at the end of it, you're taking any colour out of the black, so you're not getting any kind of like weird reds or anything like that creeping too far into the blacks.
Like with everything that you do, it's so intricate and there is so much thought that goes into it. But that's why you produce the work that you do. It's like, obviously it's talent, but it's the amount of effort and time and thought and that you put into every part of the process, not just the shooting, the planning for the shooting. And then it's so obvious from our chat today that every element throughout the day, you're always looking to improve. We've learned so much from you in this conversation, but people can learn more, can't you? Because you do mentoring sessions, don't you?
Yeah, so I offer mentoring. So you can either do it like online via Zoom, just like this, or you can actually come and sit in the studio. So I've done a couple of sessions where people have actually come and sat, and we've spent a day. It's completely tailored. So what I'll do is, often when people get in touch, I'll send them over a questionnaire, and it's like, you know, what do you want to learn? Do you want to learn colouring? Do you want to learn business? Do you want to learn editing? And I'll put together like a tailored session, and we'll sit for 8 hours and just go through everything. So I don't hold anything back. I literally just, you know, I will give kind of everything that I do, you know, show you everything that I do, and yeah, it's quite good fun.
And how can people find out about this? Is it on your website?
Yeah, so I've got like a separate contact form. So there's a separate area on the website. There's a mentoring area on the website. They can go onto that, and there's a contact form on that, so they can literally fill out that contact form, and that will come through to me. And yeah, as I say, then we'll have a quick chat and find out, you know, what you want to learn. And then it's just a case of scheduling a day. What I've had as well is I'll do a day with somebody, and then what we'll do is in a year's time we'll do another day, you know, just to go through and see kind of how you've worked in what you've learned from the mentoring into how you work. I actually did a half-day mentoring with somebody, with a mentee, and then I actually second shot for them. I came along a second shot for them, and then we did another half day afterwards. So that process was really nice because we were able to kind of go through the whole process of the wedding, and they were able to have the raw footage of my shooting after the wedding, and we were able to catch up and go through all of that together as well. So that was like a nice way of doing it, you know, and
right.
And again, I was giving, as well as advising her on the day, kind of how to go about different things and trying to help in that respect. I was also trying to creatively add to her production, so then when she comes to the edit, she can see the options that you can get, you know, these extra creative options that you can get and stuff.
That's amazing. So basically, we can get Zade as a second shooter if we do mentoring.
Well, yeah.
Let's not go that far.
Yeah.
Just remind us of your website again, mate, and also your socials as well, so people can find you.
Yeah, so socials is just Zade Film Co. I think they're all the same for Facebook and Instagram and Pinterest. And then website is just zadefilm.co.uk.
Amazing. And there's one last question I want to ask you, mate. Thank you so much for your time. But there's one question I'd like to ask everybody. What were the biggest light bulb moments in your career so far when something suddenly made sense and helped you progress or find a path that you want to be on?
I think we touched on it before, but basically taking risks and pushing outside of your comfort zone. You know, it's easy to shoot everything super safe and do everything that you usually do, but it's trying to kind of incorporate those bits. That was a light bulb for me, I think, incorporating bits like bringing the gimbal in again and just trying to spice it up and do things differently throughout the day. And don't be afraid to kind of, obviously you've got your key moments which you don't want to take massive risks on, but if there's moments, you know, throughout the day where you think you can mix it up and film it a little bit differently, you know, bring the gimbal in or shoot it on a wider lens, then, you know, try and do that. I'd also say that in terms of filming as well, like there's a time and a place to be unobtrusive, and there's a time and a place to get stuck in and get those kind of shots. Like, I think it goes without saying about being unobtrusive, you know, that's kind of built in, and I think that's a bit of a cliche word that we drop, isn't it, sort of unobtrusive videographer. But I think if you can understand which moments of the day you can get in there, you know, dancing you can get in there, the entrance you can get in there, if you're working alongside the photographer and you mention it to the photographer. Obviously the ceremony you want to be a bit further back, but it's being able to, that's a big light bulb moment, being able to, you know, I don't need to shoot the whole dancing with an 85 at the edge of the dance floor. Like the feel, how that's going to translate into my films is completely different. Whereas if I'm in there, and the couple, when they watch that back, they're going to feel in there as well. So it's, yeah, that was a huge light bulb moment. And again, just using different focal lengths and understanding what the sweet spots are for those focal lengths. So obviously a wide has a sweet spot. You know, if you're too far away, everything's tiny. If you're too close, everything's too distorted. So each different lens has that kind of sweet spot. So it's trying to, visually you'll see it, you know, when you're filming, it's like, oh, okay, it's that sweet spot. And it's understanding between each of the different focal lengths where that sweet spot is, and incorporating that into the films as well.
That is great advice, actually. And that's why working with primes is such a great thing, because you become so attuned to that specific focal length, and you soon naturally work out how far you need to be stood from something to get a great shot of it with that focal length, don't you? Just naturally. Zade, mate, thank you so much for your time today, for your insight, for your knowledge. You've been so generous with it, as always. And I'll catch you in person very soon, yeah?
Cheers, Roo. Thanks a lot, mate.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Coda Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode and wouldn't mind helping us out, please consider leaving a rating and a review wherever you get your podcasts. We have many more conversations with inspiring filmmakers still to come, so make sure to subscribe to be notified when the next episode goes live.